Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prophet Podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprophet.com. And now your hosts, Craig and Jeff.
Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Football Prophet Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey, and we got a little quick episode for you tonight. Got the Bills-Jets game, a little instant reaction to that, but I think, Jeff, before we get started, I think the bigger news in the game tonight is the Deshaun Watson injury, torn ACL, out for the year. This is a pretty big one, especially people have been using him as a top quarterback here. It's been helping all the, it's helped out Hopkins, Fuller. And what are your quick thoughts on Watson and what this means going forward for everybody involved?
I mean, it's another giant hit, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers was the first one, and you see how it just kind of falls down through the ranks of other players that are very, very, popular to have because they score so many points. But with Watson, especially him being young, and definitely a lot of people got him off the waiver wires, and especially being so close to so many people's trade deadlines, this is just a killer. Because not only are you losing the number one quarterback, this guy's been putting up, monster numbers that you've been, really relying on. But if you have Hopkins or, Will Fuller, like you mentioned, I mean, once again, you have to think that they just completely fall out of favor. I mean, you have Tom Savage coming back to play quarterback, and, unless they make a trade or go after some veteran quarterback, I don't see their numbers recovering anytime soon. So it's very difficult to see because Hopkins was the number one wide receiver. You have to think that he probably falls out of the top 10, pretty immediately. And, it's going to screw with a lot of people's teams. I don't see how people can recover that quickly, especially if your trade deadline is already passed.
I mean, you're still going to be playing Hopkins every week, but Fuller has gone now. He was going to be a sure start from everybody at this point after what he's done. I think he might fall beyond the, levels of being a sure starter now. I would think, I think this week probably you might still start him and hope that what he's been doing will continue, but this isn't going to be the same for him. I'm worried about Fuller mainly. Hopkins, I think, is still going to be able to do something. He's going to get targets, going to be okay. But when we ranked Hopkins as the number one player this week at wide receiver, that's not going to be the case. But Fuller worries me more than Hopkins here. I just don't see as much potential for Fuller going forward, so I'm really worried. Would you still be starting him, or are you just going to hold off and wait and see what Savage can do for him?
Yeah, if I had another option, I wouldn't be starting Fuller this week. And like you said, you're always going to be starting Hopkins pretty much. There's no way around that. But even he's definitely going to have some real down games with Savage, behind center. But yeah, I think you would go a different way, especially just for this first week. Because Tom Savage obviously was not playing that well. And now he's coming off the bench and he's going to be cold. And he hasn't played with Will Fuller this year, I don't believe, because I believe he came back from his injury after the fact. So, it's kind of a catastrophe if you're relying on those players right now.
Yeah, it's just not good all around. And even Lamar Miller, I think that's going to affect Lamar Miller quite a bit because he's moved up our boards a little bit. It's been a much better situation for him with Watson. And I think this could just go right back to him being with a very, pretty much low ceiling kind of player, which he was starting to get out of that and become a player you could actually trust a little bit more. But yeah, even Lamar Miller, it's going to be tough for him. I'm not excited about him going forward. And we had him both ranked top 10 this week, top 8, I think even.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's going to be the one that people kind of argue about, whether or not his numbers are going to be better or worse. And, if you look back in the start of the year, I think that's more what you're going to see. But I think people would argue, because he's doing so well, that they're probably going to give him more touches, more carries, and that would obviously, relate to more yards. But I think it's the inverse. I think he, especially as a running back, needs a good offense around him, and he can, excel in that when he's not the one being keyed on. So I'm with you. I think pretty much everyone on this offense takes a giant step back.
All right, how about we talk about this Bills-Jets game a little bit here? Another exciting game, right? I was a little surprised by this one, actually. And until 2 late garbage time touchdowns, this was just a complete blowout. It was 34-7 here until 4 minutes left when Tyrod throws a 26-yard touchdown to Deontay Thompson. Then he runs one in a couple minutes later. But I didn't see this coming from the Jets at all. And again, Josh McCown, this wasn't even as good of a game fantasy-wise, but if this is his low game and he gets 18.9 points, just another solid outing for the Jets.
Yeah, and he did it by only throwing 20 attempts.
And then, let's see here. I'm trying to pull up some numbers here. How about this? Oh, yeah, Robbie Anderson. I was trying to see what he did this week. 4 for 48 and a touchdown. Again, another good game for Robbie Anderson. That's how many weeks in a row has he's become viable as a fantasy option now? You can keep putting him into your lineups. And yeah, the volume wasn't there as much today, but even without that, he has a 10-point outing in standard, which is definitely playable. And that's, let's see here, it's 2 straight double digits with the 9. He said most of the weeks this year, the last 4 weeks, he's been pretty playable.
Yeah, I mean, he, depending on my situation, but yeah, he was definitely, high on our waiver list. And you keep putting up numbers, I'm going to play. And I think the big thing with him is how much more I feel comfortable playing Josh McCown, which I actually had to this week. And once again, another solid outing. And it just feels like that's going to continue to happen. I mean, even Forte got into the mix today. It's kind of turning into an offense you can kind of rely on scoring, a few points.
How can you trust, though, the running game? You don't know for sure who it's going to be week to week. I mean, Powell still looks pretty decent, 9 for 74.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy part. I mean, McGuire had 13 carries, Forte had 14, and Powell had 9. And McCown had 5 himself with a touchdown, which is kind of funny. But, yeah, you don't really know on that one, and I would still probably hold back from playing any one of them. Obviously, Forte jumps off the page this week, but, I don't know if I would rely on that. But, yeah, the big ones are McCown and Anderson for me. Those are 2 guys that I think you can kind of rely on moving forward.
And then not much from Safarian Jenkins, though, today, which was, I wouldn't worry too much about it just for the fact that the tight end position is so weak that he's still a borderline top 10 option every week. You kind of play him if you don't have anybody else. So, yeah, you're going to have some weeks like this, but you don't get the touchdown. But, he's still out there. He's getting catches. He should be okay.
Yeah. And I think the other big, besides for Tyrod, who saved his fantasy week by doing what you were just talking about, the other big story here is LaShawn McCoy, who obviously is the stud running back from Buffalo, who usually does really well. His last week, he blew up for over 20 points, 2.5 points, 25 rushing yards off 12 attempts, and I don't think 1 catch today. I mean, what do you make of that?
I mean, there's been a few of these games from McCoy, it seems like this year, where he has had the nothing game, followed by really great games, and you would think the Jets matchup should be the matchup where he's great. And so I do just think this team still limits him. Maybe it'll be better with Kelvin Benjamin out there, but I don't know. It's a weird thing where you expect him to be so much better than this every week. And I'm looking at this. He's had, let's see, now this is his 3rd game of 25 yards or less on the season in rushing. That's not very good. That's 3 out of 8 games he's had less than 25 yards. But he's been really good on the other weeks. So it's a tough play. I mean, obviously you're always playing LaShawn McCoy. You don't worry about who his matchup is. You're playing him every single time. But maybe it's the Jets aren't as a sure thing of an easy matchup as we have been expecting. They're still not a great run defense, but they're not just like, somebody that you can completely run all over every single time. Maybe that's where we have to adjust on that.
Yeah, and actually the defenses is an interesting aspect to talk about as well, because obviously the Bills were a high kind of waiver pickup as far as defenses go. They've been playing very, very well. And then all of a sudden you hit the Jets on Thursday night. It's the first week, at least in a lot of our leagues, that the Bills went negative, and that hasn't happened all year. So, it's kind of funny to see what New York has been able to do. I mean, they've pulled off a far, more successful year than anyone thought they would so far. I'm really surprised they did so well today against Buffalo.
Yeah, and then, Deontay Thompson had the 81 yards and a touchdown. That's his 2nd game. He's had a pretty big number for the Bills. We had the nothing game in between. Problem is, you can't trust a player like this. I mean, I guess if you see in 1 or 2 more weeks like this, then maybe you can. But it's still, is he even a pickup for you at this point? Were you just kind of
Yeah,
waiting?
the only reason he's not, I mean, very interesting, right? Because he has done very well in a couple of games so far, but you are adding another, big time wide receiver to that crew. I don't know how that's going to shake out. So I'm going to stay away from the whole situation, to be honest. And then the last guy, I just want to shout out. We just had the episode where we talked about the people we were wrong about, and then Zay Jones must have hurt us because he comes out with one of his better games, 6 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown. Good for the young guy.
Yeah, he finally did something. I mean, maybe it's they go trade for another wide receiver, and he thinks, oh shoot, maybe I should step up. So, he hadn't had more than 3 catches in a game until today, and he gets 6. So it's good to see from him that maybe there is something there. Maybe there's some potential. Well, all right, I think that's going to do it. Unless you got anything else, the game wasn't terribly exciting, so not a lot of takeaways.
Yeah, quick, down and dirty. But I'll tell you, there's going to be a lot to talk about. I love all the trades. The injuries, unfortunate, but they keep us on our toes. So we'll keep you updated on anything we hear.
All right, we'll talk to you guys on Sunday night.